And welcome back to Creative Thinkers. Again, my name is Miguel Valenzuela, and I want to thank everybody for tuning in. We have a very special guest, as we always do, Daniel Rivera, who is both a composer and a financial strategist. So Daniel, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Miguel. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure, actually, because you've got a lot to offer. So I want to start off, as I always do with my guests, tell us something about how you grew up. Why are you so creative? And are you from El Paso, I guess would be one of the main questions.
Okay. Yes, sir. Well, I am El Paso born and raised, family in Juarez, Mexico. And so I just always traveled back and forth, and eventually through music, I got to see more of Texas, San Antonio, Austin, San Marcos. So yes, El Paso is very dear to me.
And when you say through your travels, did you quite often go out and travel just to see music, like concerts? Because that's not what you actually do. You don't create like rock music, you compose something different.
Well, on the side, I do also compose rock music nowadays, but I'd like to focus on the orchestration and symphonic part of what I do.
Right.
And yes, music always guided my life. You may think that it's easy or it comes off easy now, but it was always a being in the right place at the right time with the right people.
Right.
So I always wanted to be a composer, and how exactly does one become that? Someone who hears music and writes it down, knows how to write it down, and not just what I will play, but the orchestra. What the orchestra would play. That was
right.
my initial main vision.
And where did this come from? Because I remember the first time that I heard Star Wars theme, that was unbelievable to me. And I'm sure you had some influences, like John Williams, for example, for me is just an individual who can create anything. Who was it for you? I mean, was it a Mozart? Was it a John Williams?
I didn't even realize it when I was young, watching Star Wars, going, oh, this music is so beautiful. And of course, John Williams was an influence, but it wasn't until I was in college that I saw a full orchestra performing, and me going, it hadn't been the first time I'd seen one, but when I saw this concert, I'm going like, how can all this music and all these instruments be coming out of one person? I really want to understand.
I've always found that compelling. How does that happen?
Yeah, and finally, well, I was already very devoted to music when I got to college, but I wanted to take it to the next level, really be a composer. Not anything else, because there's sometimes distractions. I want to do this in life. Well, sure, you can also be a music educator. That's nice. You can also play the saxophone. I love the saxophone because it's paid my bills up to now, and that's what I actually do. Tell you the truth, I don't pay my bills by writing symphonies.
Right.
Though my mother and I joke about that sometimes. But Mozart would do it.
I'm sure some of hers are harsh, right? Some of her jokes.
No, it's okay. But back in the day, Beethoven would pay his bills writing symphonies. Mozart, same thing, Vivaldi. And so, of course, we adjust to our world, but who are these people? And that's what influenced me when I saw the lives that Beethoven and Mozart were living. Of course, there are different times, but still, I wanted to take some of that spark and some of that experience and bring it to not just my life, but the people around me.
Right. And those people around you, when you were young, was there somebody who really touched you to catapult you into what you're doing? As far as the composing, because you do something else, and we'll hit upon that shortly.
Yeah, at this point, I just have to be very grateful and do credit to every musician, every string player, violinist, pianist that even crossed my path. Some of them wouldn't even know it, as I was walking to my class going, what is that sound? And suddenly I go and watch these people practice, and they're just pumping out the music of Debussy, of Beethoven, Vivaldi. Of course, my teachers too, I really have to always remember them. My teachers at UTEP, Mr. Eric Onsworth, was very supportive in composition. My teachers in San Antonio, my teachers in high school, Mr. Marty Olivas, Mr. Ruben Gutierrez, they were all great, Mr. Ricky Malachi. orchestration has always been a path that is not very well defined.
Right.
Dr. Don Wilkinson, by the way.
I don't know who that is.
He
Who
is.
that?
He's one of my mentors and somebody I very much respect, because even though he himself was not a composition teacher, he was my saxophone professor.
Oh, okay.
He had a similar mentality to mine. And he knew that he was out of the box, and he knew that I was out of the box. And he realized that I was trying to do something that even the university didn't have very well crafted or paved out for me. So he always encouraged me, to quote Ralph Waldo Emerson. We reached common ground in the thought of Ralph Waldo Emerson, who said, "Do not go where the path leads. In fact, go where there is no path and leave a trail."
So you have to create the path.
You have to create the path. There was no path. There was no path for me. And as much as I tried, it was not there. So I found my path in this course of Beethoven, in this course of Mozart. I would sound like a crazy person saying to my professor, saying, "I want to be a composer," or to the orchestra teacher, "Excuse me, I have a symphony. Can we play it at your next concert?" Well, of course, you don't hear that every day, right?
Yeah, not at all.
What
actually.
are they going to say, right? So I
First
had
of all, we
to-
don't live in Europe, right?
Exactly.
That's where most of the composers come from.
Exactly. Hence my obsession with Europe, but I'm over that, because we can build something like Europe here.
Create
you know?
your own path.
Exactly. But Europe is nice too, by the way.
Yeah, it is. So you were talking about education. Of course, we're a learning institution. How important is education for what you have tried to do?
I'm very grateful. Without the education system, I would be here in another 10 years. But I was able to get quicker to what I wanted because of my teachers, you know, that offered the path. Or often, sometimes, the teachers that did not offer the path.
In which way?
That fueled me and said, "We do not offer composition." Well, I have to find it somewhere. I go to the library, I start looking at the scores. I'm going to find it. Oh, there's a Symphony No. 5 by Beethoven. Oh my God, it looks like this. I can't read all of this. That's why you're teaching me how to learn these other clefs that I can't read. You know what, Mr. Professor, I am going to listen to you, because everything you're wanting to teach me, ear training, music majors, you know this, ear training, music theory, all the challenging things, when you go to the classroom and you say, "Hey, why am I learning this?" It's very important. That set of skills, it's very important. There's no skipping that.
Well, because I think it's important to understand that there has to be like a basis for everything, right? And you actually brought us some books, which I want to look at, because when I look at this stuff, you know, it absolutely is another language. How does one come up with this?
Okay. Well, this score that you're looking at, for instance, let's take a look.
Yeah.
This
So this is Mozart's Requiem. Requiem for a Dream, right?
Oh, that's a movie.
Oh, what is this
is Requiem Mass for the Dead.
For the Dead. Okay,
Yeah.
tell us.
So Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart was a Viennese composer. He was just prolific all his life. This was towards the end of his life, and what we have here is a score that has many instruments. So it can be a little overwhelming, and I was overwhelmed, I'm not going to lie. Without
All I
proper
see is a bunch
guidance-
of dots and a bunch of little lines.
it's
What does
crazy.
this mean?
Here. So music travels this way.
Correct.
But if you look down the line, we have a list of instruments. And they're in a different language.
Oh, so this is all of the instruments being played, and this is the way each one is being played.
Yes.
And time, I guess. Cool.
So the orchestra, this is a full symphony orchestra. The orchestra is divided into 3 families. Right here is the strings, violins, and violas.
Okay.
Right here, well, we actually have the voices, the choir.
okay.
So soprano, alto, tenor, bass. And up here, we have percussion. He's not using them all right off the bat, but the 3 families of the orchestra are the winds, the brass, and the strings. So now, when you look at this, it all starts to make sense when you hear the music, of course, and you read along, but there is certain notes that are happening simultaneously. And so you know, the first look you might be, as we all, you
That
know,
makes
like,
no
whoa,
sense to
what
me
is
whatsoever.
what is this, right?
Yeah, right.
And you start flipping through it. And for many, many weeks when I was starting my studies, I would look at these trying to make sense. And it wouldn't make sense right away. I'm not
Right,
gonna
of
lie.
course.
I wasn't blessed with
It
At
looks
least not
very
right away.
complicated.
It can be. It really can be. This here, again, same thing. This is called the staff, the grand staff. So it has all the instruments. So what you do is you start to see what each instrument is doing. Mozart, for instance, was very well versed in something called block scoring.
Mm-hmm.
There's a conversation going on within the orchestra.
Oh.
For instance, ba-da-dum-bum-bum-bum.
Mm-hmm.
You have a musical idea, and the strings play it. Suppose, by the way, this is what the conductor sees.
Mm-hmm.
So suppose I'm the conductor and I have the symphony right in front of me. Ba-da-dum-bum-bum-bum. And then on this side, an answer. Ba-da-dum-bum-bum-bum.
Oh.
So that's block scoring.
So the whole thing is a conversation.
Yes. Yes,
Wow.
it really is.
How does one come up with this, though? How does one figure out mentally, I'm going to put a piano here, I'm going to put a violin here, I'm going to put a trombone here, I'm going to put whatever. How do you figure that out? Because you will be showing us one of your methods of composition shortly.
Okay, absolutely. Well, very humbly, small steps, small steps. And again, to quote Dr. Don Wilkinson in his practical wisdom, he would say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Makes sense.
So in other words, don't try to tackle the whole orchestra. What I did, don't worry about the brass. Don't worry about the winds, even though I'm a wind player. Let's start with the strings. Let's start small. Because even within the strings, there's 4 instruments, 3 of which I never played or even read the music of. So the violin, another violin, viola, and cello, and contrabass. So actually 5.
Okay.
So that alone is enough for anybody starting out to spend the next 2 to 5 years mastering the strings. That's what I chose to do.
Yeah.
That's what I chose to do. I'm going to focus on the strings as the core and the heart of the orchestra. So in a condensed version, you have the string quartet, which is this book here.
Okay.
That's taking out the
So
winds.
is this like the basic elements that then I can expand on?
Yes, yes.
And
yes,
when
yes,
you're
yes.
creating a composition, do you say, I'm going to think of a couple of strings or a couple of sounds that I'm going to put together, and then from there, I think I can add another violin there, or a viola there,
There you
or I
go.
think I can add a drum to the back of this, and that will emphasize what I'm trying to say. So it's
Yes.
almost like this dialogue that you're creating. Do you see all the instruments in your head at the same time? Or do you just start with the initial 4 and then build upon that?
Sometimes I do, but I'll be honest, I start off small. I start off with a core. A melody, even a melody is enough to anchor everything, or a rhythm. Anything that creates momentum is already an idea. If I have a cellist going, there's no melody, but now we have an idea. That can be the core or the start of something. Just like in a rock concert,
Right.
a drummer can start the song and no one's playing with him. A drummer can start by just generating momentum. So same thing.
Oh, is that why?
You see.
Okay.
So they take different roles. So now there's a rhythm, but there's no melody. And I say, well, I have a violin and a viola. I can either have, why don't we give the melody to a violinist? Then
Oh, you have to think about that too.
Oh, yeah.
You might not want to put the drum in because it's just not the right time to put the drum in.
Exactly.
It might have to be another violinist or a viola. See, I would have never thought that because it's so complicated. But you know what? One of the things that's important to me when I hear music, and I always talk about this with my daughters, is I like complex music. When it's so simple, there are simple songs that are great, compositions that are great, but when it's so simple, it just doesn't do anything for me. It's when I hear that complexity that I really get excited. What is it for you? What excites you in music?
Well, I'm at a middle ground now. I made things a little difficult for myself in the beginning. As most young composers do, and I don't want to speak at absolutes, but mostly every young composer will make this mistake. Let's reinvent the wheel. Let's rewrite history. It's like, no, slow down. Because you know what? Once you write down something amazingly complicated, who cares what you've done if nobody can play it?
True.
Now, Mozart, however, was brilliant because boom, 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 boom. That is the easiest thing to play on the violin.
Oh, really?
He knew, yeah, and it took a violinist to tell me that. look, Daniel, these are all my open strings. And Mozart knew that. So Mozart is writing music that is simple and easy and enjoyable for the players to play. My job as a composer is not to challenge the player and to be like, haha, can you play this? That's not what I'm here for. And some composers do that. And maybe somewhere in the piece I'll be like, okay, let's challenge them, but not entirely the whole time. The purpose of composition is to bring people together, to create simplicity, and to have people come together.
So the compositions are interesting. You're actually going to show us one of your compositions, or not show us one of your compositions, but show us how you actually compose. So we're actually going to watch it on the video screen here momentarily. So the next thing that I wanted to ask you was, you know, you are a creative individual. Have you always been creative, or was this something that one day it sprouted in you? Because it seems to me, from the way that you dress, what we've spoken about and all that, you're just one creative guy.
Maybe I just can't help it. Maybe I just can't
Some
help
people
it.
can't, you know. It's the way that we are. Nothing more than that.
Yeah, it's all right to have an imagination. It's okay to think outside the box. It's okay to say, you know what, life is boring, let's make it fun. But really, life is not boring. There is so much to see in this world. This world is full of wonder and awe. And sometimes it just takes a choice to say, you know what, I want to see this world through eyes of awe and wonder. And you start connecting with other things that are full of awe and wonder.
Absolutely, because it's not just about music.
It's really
not just about art. It could be the way that you dress, the way that you act, the way that you communicate with people. And that's one thing that I think is interesting, because you're not just a composer, you're also a conductor of music. What exactly is that?
Okay, well, a conductor.
Yeah,
what is
well,
a
like,
conductor?
all I see is these guys with these little sticks, you know, conducting the music.
What is that
how
guy
do those
doing
dots turn into this, you know?
Totally.
Or this, you know?
Well, I'll tell you what, and I'll quote some of my teachers, but all a conductor is doing is conducting traffic.
Right.
So what happens here is we have many things going on, but the orchestra needs someone to lead them. And by the way...
Now, question, if they know their part, why do they need to be led?
When there's an X amount of people that is beyond maybe 4 people or 6 people, then someone needs to conduct them. Now, I'm not saying a conductor is required, you know. Sometimes, again, the string quartet doesn't have a conductor. Maybe the lead player can conduct them, and you know, there is always one player that takes the lead and
so there's, in essence, some sort of a conductor going on.
Yes,
Very
which
cool.
we call a concert master. In my case, I conduct when there is more than 15, 20 players involved, right? But then again, I'm also conducting when I'm playing my jazz quartet.
Yeah.
So there's always some sort of leadership involved in music.
Yeah, which is one thing that we're going to do, because you're, again, going to show us one of your videos, which we'll see here on the screen.
Check it out.
So... you're also advising people on something that I think is very, very important. And a lot of people would say these are two different worlds. How in the world did you bring them together? How did you get into finances?
Yes, and again, I hold to this. Music has always guided my life. Music guides my life. And I pour my heart and soul to music, and I give my all to music. And suddenly music speaks back and says, okay, Daniel, you can write now. You can sound good. You have something for the world. Well, now you need to fund it, and you need to learn how the greats would fund it in the past.
We had a short conversation before we started recording. How in the world did they fund all that? I mean, it's amazing because they did so many amazing things. How does one do that?
Well, I'll tell you, don't fall in the trap of being idealistic, because for a few years I fell in that trap and I had to learn the hard way. But back in the day, here's how they did it. To answer your question, Beethoven, Mozart, Vivaldi, they had a lot of support. These people were not wealthy. And sometimes, they lived very wealthy. They lived in beautiful homes in Vienna, but they had people sponsoring them. They had the patron system, the Duke of Vienna, or even the king. Sometimes the system that these composers were very fortunate to live in, which is not the same system that I live.
Unfortunately, we don't have any kings here, right?
Yeah, I can't go knock in the door of the king of Spain and say, hey, I'm writing a symphony. I need $1,200,
Right.
But that's what would happen. Eventually, Beethoven reached a certain status. He earned credibility for himself that people would commission him.
So you'd have to work up to that.
Oh, absolutely.
At the beginning. You'd have to show something for it first. But then once you became, I guess, a little well-known or good enough, people would give you money to actually create compositions for
requests. So I
give us an example.
Okay. Let me see. Anything fresh? Every symphony has its own story. If you look at, say, the Third Symphony of Beethoven or the Fifth Symphony of Beethoven or even this Requiem Mass, someone comes along that says, Herr von Beethoven, we have the Pope visiting and we need a Mass for this Sunday. Or not to look any further, Johann Sebastian Bach had to write a Mass every Sunday. So he was prolific. He was always under pressure, but the church would support him. Say, hey, you are our court composer, here's whatever you need.
Yeah, because I understand about court this and court that, because there were court painters in the same way that I guess there were composers back in the day. There was an artist that painted, at least for a time, most of the works of art for that king or queen or duke or duchess or whatever. That's right. So that's kind of a thing with music as well.
Yes. Wow. And it works both ways, because it slowly shifted. How do I say? So Mozart was a court composer, and he had his own style already, which the patrons enjoyed, but he also had to stay within what they wanted him to do.
Right.
On the other hand, Beethoven comes along, and God bless his heart for everything he did for us, all artists, musicians, painters. He just led the charge, and he said, you know what? This is about the individual. I work for no one. I work for humanity. And so he was not working for the king or specifically for the church. He would write music, and he would write what was in his heart. He would break the rules, and he would come and say, this is it. This is my truth.
But they would say, we need something to be played for a death or for the church. But he would play from his heart.
Yes, once that's established, they're like, wow, Maestro, Beethoven, that's amazing. Could you please perform for this? Or could you, more than perform, could you write? Could you write for us a piece that will forever be remembered in time? Not just as you writing, but our special occasion here. Can you write something for us?
Like maybe even a party?
A party, absolutely. Really? Or somebody getting married, or someone being born, a child being born, a graduation, anything. You could commission a composer to write for anything.
Because I know that they did plays, right? They would, when they did a performance of some sort, they would have a piece that went with that performance. That's right. But so I thought that's the only reason why they made them, like John Williams doing like films, right?
Right.
Today. But that's what I thought. So it could be for any occasion then.
Yeah, absolutely. And now that's more in the shifting more towards the modern world. And to your question, what guided me to financial services is I don't want to say I gave up on patrons, but I never found somebody that said, Mr. Rivera, you are amazing. Let me give you $1,200 to write a symphony.
More like $50,000
Or
a year.
$50,000. You know, ask my
And
wife.
all you have to do is that,
Whatever
right?
my wife says, that's the rate, okay? But I'll tell you the truth. I found an opportunity in which I very strongly believe in the value of this music. And because of that, I have found many other people that are talented, that I believe in them too, and I say, you know what, I'm going to step up. I want to be the patron of the arts.
Wow.
I don't see anyone else doing it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be the patron of the arts.
That is really cool. So how did you get into financial services, literally?
Grace of God. Grace of God after the pandemic. Of course, everybody knows there was not a lot of live music going on, which was my livelihood. And again, it's all about perspective, thinking positive. We can say the pandemic happened to me, or the pandemic happened for me.
Right.
So when one door closes, another opens, and I'm here thinking like, what else can I do in life? And I had this opportunity since like 4 or 5 years ago already, that it really, really called to me in my heart. My heart never lies, and you should always listen to your heart. Where something feels right, just find it, follow it. And so I had this opportunity for business, but I was finishing school. And then it finished, and it came back. I'm like, hey, what is that? What is that? These gentlemen found me in a networking event, and they like to remember how I had my guitar and I was writing music amongst businessmen. Everybody else is there to talk business, and I'm here writing the next thing, right?
Of course. What else would you be doing, right?
Right. Well, I was following my prayer, and my prayer was answered. This amazing team that allowed the opportunity for me to learn something new, something that I was completely new to and unfamiliar with, something that I could learn and grow from, and not only help myself, but help the community and help families. I was skeptical, of course. It's natural to be skeptical, and everybody is, but it's like, how can I help families? I mean, come on, we're in a pandemic and so many people have lost their loved ones. And I'm here still, you know, and I feel still here thinking about the art and my music. Part of me is like, Daniel, you're so selfish. Think of the world. What does the world really need? Even if I wrote the symphony, who cares? What does the world need? What does the world really need?
You know, I think we need help, and it seems like that's something that you do through both mediums, you know? When you help people understand what money does and how it works and how it can help them in the future to build their future, it's in the same kind of way that you are creating compositions to liven people's lives up. So what's one thing that you can answer quickly as far as why it's important for people to think outside the box?
Okay. To think outside the box is...
Yeah. Because I believe that when the people are thinking about how to invest their money, you have to think outside the box.
You have to.
Yeah, why is it important?
Well, first of all, it's not something that is being taught in schools. And the knowledge or the lack of knowledge is what gets us and our families and collectively society in trouble. Because later on we're struggling, or God forbid somebody passes away. No one is ever prepared for that expense.
Absolutely.
And so you now have, you know, if someone passes away, like a mother, father, or someone in the upper generation, you're dealing now with not only the emotional loss and tragedy, but also a financial unexpected burden. What I do is I help people prepare for that now, because I believe in it now and I see how that's important.
Well, that's super exciting, and I wanted to say that the fact that you were here talking to us about being creative in so many different ways and just kind of what you've done is something that can really help people. If somebody wanted you to compose something for you, how would they get a hold of you? Because we're running out of time pretty quickly.
You email me or you give me a call. My phone number is 915-408-3131. Or also there's Facebook and Instagram. Trust me, I'm easy to find.
And then we can set those up down here at the bottom of the screen for you.
Very easy to find.
Yeah, so you're an individual who can compose something for my daughter's birthday, if I ask?
At your service, absolutely, absolutely.
I really appreciate your time, Daniel. Thank you very much for coming, because you're a very cool cat.
Thank you.
And a very talented one.
Hey, right back at you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank everybody for joining us once again to have these wonderful guests every time that we present them to you. We always bring creativity to your home. Thank you very much. Again, my name is Miguel Valenzuela.